Hi, Gordon here with another week in the Unscripted Series. And this is by viewer request. I was asked to talk about what's changed in our ukuleles. So this is the 6th ukulele that we ever built. It's the 2nd that was not a resonator. And I guess what's interesting to me is to talk about what hasn't changed. And what hasn't changed is the size of the body, the thickness, as well as the outline. This is a tenor joined 14 frets to the body, like we do now. It's got a lot of similarities to our ukuleles of today. But when we started out, I really approached the ukulele as if it was a small guitar. I'd built a number of guitars, and I knew it wasn't a small guitar, but still in your mind, when you think about the bracing and the thickness of the top and back, you kind of scale it from a guitar. And yet, what I found in time is that it doesn't scale at all. In fact, things get much lighter and much thinner. This, from a design standpoint, and I'm talking about, again, the bracing and inside, it really was built like a small classical guitar and scaled that way. This weighs 1 pound and 12 ounces. And if I weigh a current ukulele that has basically the same materials, same tuners, pickup, it weighs about 1 pound and 6 ounces. So that's a pretty big difference. 6 ounces, let's see, out of 1628. So that's pretty close to a 20%, maybe even a little bit more than a 20% change in weight, and all without changing the fundamental heavy things: strings, tuners, very heavy, mahogany neck, the wood, the pickup. The bridge, I suspect, is about the same weight. So without changing any of that, 20% goes away. The neck got a little bit thinner, the headstock is thinner, but a lot of that is just the internals of the body. And I think I've probably had now a dozen different luthiers come to me with their first ukuleles. People that had built guitars and say, what do you think of this? And in every case, my answer is it's overbuilt, and I can tell it right away. And in this one, although it's opened up quite nicely, this is zebra wood with a spruce top, and I'll tell you a little bit more about this instrument at the end of the video. But it's opened up. I get the G string in tune. It's opened up quite nicely. But it still, if you listen to it, sounds to me tight and constrained. And it's just because the body is not built quite light enough. And as I said, the outline of our bodies and the thickness hasn't changed. And that's because, as you know, I'm an engineer and approach things from that standpoint first. And so I was able early on, I understood the physics of the acoustics. And so when it came to the size, the volume of the chamber, that I can get right on paper. But it took a lot of experimentation to get the bracing correct and the top thickness correct. The number of braces, well, I guess it has changed. This one has 3 fans, and generally, sometimes we put in 3 if we've got a very thin top. But generally, it's 2 fan braces. But it's just hard as a former guitar builder to understand just how light you can make the ukulele. You're just convinced as you're taking wood off the top that this thing is going to collapse. And it's just amazing to me how much you can take off and still have the ukulele open up and structurally be sound. But man, it just continues to open up and resonate. So fundamentally, from an acoustic standpoint, that's what's changed in our instruments over time. We made the neck, I think I mentioned that, we made the neck thinner. A lot of things aesthetically have changed. This has a tiny little purfling rosette. It's a water-based lacquer finish that we don't do anymore. Kind of a clunky old bridge that we used in the beginning. The headstock here is bigger, fatter, thicker than we do now. So I think we've got a more aesthetically pleasing design. But You know, I also look back. I mean, I string the 1,000th instrument here on Monday, and so I look back 1,000 instruments ago, and I'm pretty pleased with the first design. It wasn't that far off. So anyway, this ukulele, I may have told the story before, but this one was bought by a guy named Ray Fair, and there were really, in the early days of Mya-Moe, there were 3 or 4 very important things that happened to us that gave us, I think, a lot of positive reinforcement for what we were doing. And one of them was that when we had just a couple of instruments, Moe Dixon's instruments, and some bodies half under construction, including this one, we went to a local music store in Portland, Oregon, and we were showing the owner the instruments, and a guy walks in off the street looking for a ukulele, and the owner pointed him to the wall of less expensive kind of imported ukuleles. And the guy said, well, do you have anything kind of custom? And he came back to where we were talking, and he looked at this, and it was just a body in a phone case, and he said, well, what about that one? Is it sold? And we said, well, no. And he said, can I write you a check for it right now? And we thought, man, if people are walking in off the streets just buying ukuleles, writing checks, we need to be building these things. The guy was Ray Fair and became a good friend of ours, and we lost Ray, gosh, a year and a half ago, or 2.5, I forget now. But this was his ukulele, and he willed it back to us. And if you go on Uke Tracker and you look up number 29, you'll see a song, a video we recorded of Ray playing this ukulele. And so that's pretty cool, and a little bit of Mya-Moe history there. Anyway, that's what's changed in our design, and I think my hint to luthiers out there is from the very beginning, build them light. You know, if the first few even are underbuilt and collapse under the tension of the string, I think it's better to, in the beginning, when you're experimenting, to err that way and then make them a little bit more stronger than go the other way. And certainly you've got to know what the limits are. Anyway, that is it, and I will see you next week with another edition of the Unscripted Series. Thanks, and bye-bye.